Let us know how to apply manure and pesticides on crops. When the rice crop begins to grow, it attracts many insects and pests towards it. These pests damage the crop before harvesting. Some of these pests eat the leaves while others get into the growing sapling through the roots and stems and feed upon the juice of the rice grain, which eventually destroys it. To control these pests, pesticides must be sprayed on the crop. Examples of pests are moth caterpillars, paddy beetles and their larvae, paddy grasshoppers and paddy bugs. Let us study crop protection and management. Crops and diseases. Crops like wheat, sugarcane and paddy are mostly affected by diseases that are caused by fungi. These plants usually have spots and scars on leaves and stems. Especially in groundnut, all the leaves of the affected plant contain powdery spots. Because of this, the whole plant becomes wilted. This fungal disease is called Ticca disease. When you pluck out these roots and observe, you can witness a filthy odor and also see powdery spots on them. This clearly depicts that there is a pathway from the roots to the stem that spreads the disease. Now, observe the leaves and stem of a lemon plant that has spots on it. The spots formed on these are a result of viral action. The whitish-brown spots that we notice sometimes on fruits and leaves are because of bacterial effect. Also, other insects like mites, citrus butterflies, aphids, citrus blackfly, caterpillars, etc. are found on the lemon tree leaves. They are the carriers of disease-causing viruses, bacteria and fungi. These need to be controlled. Let us know how to identify the pests in crops. In agriculture, along with weeds, pests also damage the crops. But most of the crops are generally affected by pests. We might have sometimes observed caterpillars on leaves of plants and eating them. Small holes and tears found on leaves of the plants are the evidence caused by insects. If there is a swelling, that can be thought of as an insect inside. If the leaves are crumpled or tilted, that suggests the presence of aphids that have been sucking the juice of a plant. White, black, yellow or brown spots or even powdery or fluffy marks signal that the plants are affected by fungal infections. The discoloration of leaves and stems are caused by the bacterial or viral infections. Certain root infections that are caused because of fungi or insects like worms make the entire plant get wilted. Each and every plant has a definite number of insects depending upon it for some reasons. These insects can either be helpful or harmful to the plant. For instance, bees, wasps, etc. help in pollination, and insects like those of ladybugs help by eating other harmful insects. In actuality, even the pests, when in limited numbers, do not pose a threat to the plant growth. In fact, they serve to keep in check the plant population. But if the presence of these pests increases to a huge number, then it causes substantial harm to the plants. In large farms and plantations where there are numerous plants, the pests move themselves easily from one plant to another and damage the entire crop of the plantation. The most common agricultural pests are insects. Their number increases easily when there is enormous food availability. During normal times, their number stays small and stagnant, but during monsoons, their eggs hatch and their population grows plentifully. Generally, pests lay their eggs in the soil at the end of the season, which hatch only in the next monsoon. For example, the desert locust in India occurs at periodic timings, while the Deccan wingless grasshopper occurs only during Kharif season. A few insects like aphids and whitefly not only suck off the sap but also spread viral infections. Other pests may be carried out by mammals like rats, squirrels, bats, rabbits, hares, monkeys, etc. These crop infectious pests are also carried by other creatures like snails, slugs, crabs, centipedes, millipedes, etc. Now, let us learn about different types of pesticides. Controlling pests. Controlling pests is a difficult task. Generally, farmers use pesticides and insecticides to control the pests. If there are more pests on a crop, then farmers mix and spray 2 or more pesticides on the crop. There are wide varieties of agricultural and garden pesticides. Some of them are available in natural form and some of them are available in artificial form. Natural pesticides are extracted from plants like tobacco, neem, chrysanthemum, etc. These do not cause much harm to other living organisms. Artificial pesticides or inorganic pesticides include compounds of arsenic, sulfur, phosphorus, zinc, and fluorine. Farmers mostly spray synthetic pesticides like DDT, dichloro, diphenyl trichloroethane, BHC, benzene hexachloride, endrine, aldrin, endosulfan, and diazinon on crops. Some of these pesticides are sprinkled in the soil. Some of them act on specific species of pests, but most of them cause harm to the other useful animals. Let us study about the hazards of using pesticides. Rachel Carson in 1960 wrote a book called Silent Spring, in which she made a great mark about the hazards of pesticides. Due to the usage of pesticides, their constituents get into the bodies of microscopic animals and plants in the soil and water. When fish consume these microscopic plants and animals, the pesticides enter into their bodies. Though the fish are not seriously poisoned, the pesticides remain in their bodies. When birds eat these infected fish, it might get a concentrated lethal dose. DDT accumulates and causes the weakening of their eggshells and make the eggshells break before hatching. Pesticides can cause harm in 2 ways. They are passing down the food chain, builds up in the bodies of higher animals, including human beings. It causes sickness and sometimes even leads to death. Now let us study the ways to get high yield. Adding manure. Along with the addition of controlling pests and diseases, proper manuring is also important for agriculture. We know that plants require nutrients to grow well, which are obtained from soil. The land that are currently using has been in use for a very long time. So, if the same crop is being grown on the same land for years together, all the nutrients of the soil get decreased and the soil becomes less productive. Thus, in order to overcome this problem, farmers add manure to the soil. Manure is needed for healthy growth of plants. Manure contains phosphorus, potassium, nitrogen, etc. Manure is of two types. They are natural manure, artificial manure. Click each tab to know more. Natural manure. Natural manure is also called biofertilizer. This is formed due to the decomposition of animal and plant waste. In villages, there is a separate place for this decomposition of plant and animal waste at the outskirts. Bacteria like Azotobacter and Nyctobacter decompose these waste and make it nutrient-rich, which support immense soil fertility and thereby provide a great health to the plants. Artificial manure. Artificial manure is also called chemical fertilizer. This manure is prepared in industries and contains incredibly high amounts of nitrogen, potash and phosphorus. It is sold in the markets with the names of urea, DAP, superphosphate, etc.
Here let us perform an activity to observe the growth of seedlings with manure and fertilizer.
Click each tab to know more.
Take green gram seeds and germinate them. Among them, select 3 equal-sized seedlings. Now take 3 empty glasses and mark them as A, B and C. Now to glass A, add a little amount of soil mixed with a little amount of cow dung manure. In glass B, put the same amount of soil mixed with a little urea. In glass C also, pour the same amount of soil without adding anything to it. Now pour equal amounts of water in each glass and plant the seedlings in them. Keep them aside in a safe place and water them regularly. After 7 to 10 days, observe their growth and find out which glass shows better growth of plants. It is observed that glass B with urea has grown faster and bigger when compared to glass A with cow dung and glass C without anything in it. From the experiment, we can conclude that the plants grow taller and faster when sprinkled with urea fertilizer. Fertilizers are the chemical substances that are rich in a particular nutrient. Some examples of fertilizers include urea, ammonium sulfate, superphosphate, potash, NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Usage of fertilizers helps the farmers to get a better yield of crops like wheat, maize and paddy. But overusage of these fertilizers damages the crop. Now let us learn in detail about the problems of overusage of fertilizers.
Let us know what happens when the manure is used more. Overdosage of manure. Farmers need to use fertilizers by keeping in view the nature of the soil and the crops that are to be grown. Sometimes, some of the farmers will spray excess fertilizers in order to obtain a higher quantity of crops. But this would ultimately damage soil fertility to a great extent. This in turn leads to soil pollution and water pollution. Using fertilizers extensively would end up making the soil either too alkaline or too acidic. Finally, it brings sorrow to the farmers. The table on the screen gives the differences between natural fertilizers and artificial fertilizers. Let us study about the process of irrigation in agriculture. Irrigation is nothing but the process of watering the crop plants in the field. The important point to be noted here is that the source of water must be at a higher level so that each and every part of the field gets water. The main source of water for farmers are wells and canals. Farmers irrigate their fields either manually or by using bullocks or by using pumps. In our country, 3 methods are used commonly for irrigation practice. They include furrow irrigation, basin irrigation, drip irrigation. First, let us study about furrow irrigation. In this type of irrigation, furrows are dug in between 2 rows of plants. They are made in the form of channels. Through these channels or furrows, the water is allowed to enter into the field. Now let us study about basin irrigation. In this method of irrigation, the field is just allowed to be filled with water, as in case of a paddy field. In most of the areas of Andhra Pradesh, canals, tanks and wells are used as the main water resources for irrigation. The main task involved in irrigation is preparing of canal bunds and removal of water flow barriers like pistia plants. Sometimes a field gets filled with excess amount of water in such a way that even the soil also does not have the capability to absorb it. This condition is called waterlogging. It is very harmful to most of the crops because it is impossible for the roots of the plants to respire in this condition. For this purpose, there must be a certain process to drain the excess amount of water from the fields. Here, let us study the necessity of water to the plants. We know that plants require nutrients to grow. These nutrients are present in the soil and they must be transported to the plant. For this reason, they must be dissolved in water. When nutrients dissolve in water, they can be transported easily to the plants with the help of their roots. That is why farmers water their fields after adding manure to it. Providing water to the fields in different stages of agriculture is called irrigation. Irrigation is basically done according to the nature of soil, type of crop to be grown. For example, paddy requires a huge amount of water. So, paddy is grown in areas where huge amount of water is available. Because of high demand and supporting price, paddy is grown all over the country irrespective of availability of water. Nowadays, farmers have started growing fish in paddy fields. During ancient times, farmers used the primitive methods like moat, chain pump, rahat, etc. for irrigation of their land. The water which is available in lakes, wells and canals is carried out to their agriculture by lifting it up by using different methods in different regions. Mostly, cattle or human labor is used in these methods. Hence, these methods are cheaper and less efficient. But in the present days, pumps are commonly used for lifting water. Diesel, biogas, electricity are used to run these pumps. Here, let us study the modern irrigation practices. Sprinkler irrigation. When water is being transported through canals, most of it gets percolated down the soil before it reaches the plants. In order to prevent this water loss, a new device of watering plants is introduced, which is called as a sprinkler. It directly sprinkles water to the plants without creating much loss of water. It is widely used in water-scarce areas. These sprinklers are simple and easy to use. It provides uniform watering throughout the field. It works based on the principle of force of water. Sprinklers are mostly used in sandy soil fields. Government is providing huge subsidies to the sprinklers and drip irrigation systems. Drip irrigation. This method is used in the fields where there is less availability of water. In this method, as the water reaches the plants drop by drop, this is called drip irrigation. This method consists of a long tube followed by small tubes that are attached to a motor. These holes are made in such a way that plants receive water exactly at the place where plant roots could absorb water. Here, let us know what is weeding. If you observe a groundnut field, you can also find certain plants which are growing adjacently to the groundnut plants. These are called weeds and are undesirable plants. These plants must be removed immediately because these weeds compete with the main groundnut plants for sources like water, nutrients from the soil and sunlight. They also cause different diseases and serve as a host for different pests. They may also cause respiration problems. Therefore, they need to be controlled. Long before, a weed called Parthenium was accidentally imported from Australia along with wheat. Since then, its growth began to be witnessed here too. Its pollen grains are likely to cause certain environmental problems and allergies to human beings. Some weeds like Garika, Vanza, Varipilla Gaddi, Suka, Bhogi, Dharaka, Buradatunga grow along with paddy. We can see plants like Gunugu, Gaddi Chamanti, Jiluga in vegetable crops, Pogaku Malle in tobacco, Pulichinta in mirchi and cotton fields are the common weeds. Process of weeding. Now, let us understand how weeding is exactly done. Weeding is done by using different methods by the farmers. Weeds are majorly uprooted during the tilling or ploughing process itself. Even after tilling or manual uprooting of the weeds, if there are any remains of weeds, they must be removed before flowering, because flowering would attract pests and cause them to spread. Sometimes these weeds are removed by using weed harrow. Examples: Dhante or Guntaka is used by farmers to remove weeds from the fields. If weeds grow after the primary plant, it reaches its maximum height and it becomes impossible to get rid of them with the above mentioned methods. So, weedicides like 2,4-D, 2,4-dichlorophenoxyacetic acid are sprayed by the farmers to control the weed growth. Weedicides are manufactured in a way that are specific only for a particular target, and they tend to cause no harm to other plants which grow beside the weeds. Now let us study about how to harvest the grown crops. Harvesting of a crop is the most predominant task in agriculture. Gathering the grains from the crop by cutting the mature crop is called harvesting. Harvesting is done either by pulling out or by cutting down the mature crop close to the ground. After cutting down, the crop is dried under the sun so as to ensure moisture vaporization, if any. After the moisture gets evaporated, the seeds are separated out from the crop either manually or by machinery. Harvesting of paddy. In case of paddy crop, the harvesting is done by using a sickle. After cutting the ripe crop, it is made to dry under the sun for about 2 to 3 days. This is done to ensure that all the water is evaporated. If not, this can cause the sprouting of the rice grain. Farmers mostly choose machinery for the harvesting procedure because it is easy and proficient. Farmers feed sparrow, their friend, before harvesting the crop. This is especially done by the young children in the family. They collect ripened grains, make a bundle of it, and put it at the top of their roof for them to eat. The sparrows, in gratitude, thank the farmers by chirping. In order to meet the food requirements of growing population, there should be an increase in cultivating land. But nowadays, most of India's rural land has remained uncultivated. This is mainly because of unavailability of seeds, insufficient water to the fields, power problem, market problem, etc. By keeping the above things in mind, farmers think that agriculture is not a profitable sector. But actually, agriculture is the backbone of our economy. Agriculture can be made more sophisticated and convenient by providing facilities. This enables the farmers to be encouraged and work better to meet the food demands of the nation. Young people need to develop more passion towards agriculture, which would be a beneficial occupation in the near future. Following are the 3 methods used for harvesting the crop: threshing, winnowing, modern harvester. Click each tab to know more. Threshing. In this harvesting method, the crop stalks are held and are beaten on a hard surface to segregate the grain. Machines are also used to serve this purpose. Threshing is also done with the help of bullocks which trample the grain. Winnowing. In this process, the harvested grains are poured down from a certain height with the help of a basket or a tray. The wind blowing would separate the lighter husk, dust and chaff aside, whereas the heavier grains collect below. Modern harvester. Currently, it's quite common to harvest the grains with the help of a harvester. Generally, after collection of seeds, farmers separate the grains by using a process called winnowing. This process is done manually by farmers by using a chata and a fan or a winnowing machine. In some villages, you might have observed that farmers harvest their crops on the roads instead of using bullocks. But this is a very dangerous practice because sometimes accidents may happen. Farmers generally use traditional methods to harvest. Now, let us know how to store the grains after harvesting them. Generally, you might have seen in your houses that the grains were stored in a tin after drying in hot sunlight. Storage of grain is another prominent task for the farmers. Storing the grain until they get the estimated market price is usually a difficult task because of various reasons like rats, insects, pesticides, etc. Even the moisture or wetness is a danger to the grain because they can cause the growth of fungi. If fungi develops, the grain can no longer be sold or consumed. Therefore, the storage of grain must be done quite cautiously with utmost care and attention. In order to overcome the problems, farmers dry the grains for 2 to 3 days under sunlight. Next, these grains are filled in jute or gunny bags and sent to godowns for storage purpose. A few decades back, farmers used to store grains in metallic and bamboo tins, but now this method has been discarded. Nowadays, farmers are using specific chemical treatments for the storage of grains to protect them from pests and microorganisms. A cold storage unit protects the grains from harmful microorganisms. Fruits, vegetables, tamarind, chilies, etc. that cannot survive for longer duration of time but can be well stored in these units. Since the temperature in cold storage is too low, the vegetables and fruits can be preserved for a longer duration.
Now let us learn about animal husbandry. Till now, we have learned the different techniques used by farmers to obtain better yields in agriculture. In a similar manner, care must be taken in the management of rearing animals also. Animals reared at home or in farms have to be provided with proper food, shelter and care. When this is done on a large scale, it is called animal husbandry. In other words, animal husbandry is a branch of agriculture concerned with the care and management of livestock. From the period of early man, animals are being used for the purpose of food, transportation and agriculture. The table on the screen gives the information about the period from which wild animals were being domesticated. People domesticate only some animals which are helpful to them. Examples: buffaloes and cows which give milk, hens, goats, sheep for the purpose of meat, ox, horse, bulls, donkeys for the purpose of agriculture and transportation. Though we get varieties of food products from plants, it is not sufficient to fulfill all the food requirements of the society. Hence, we need food from animals also. Production of food from animals is also as important as agriculture in our country. Farmers in our country believe that animal husbandry is a part and parcel of agriculture.
Follow-up work. Take up the following activities.
Go to the nearest fertilizer shop and gather information about the chemical fertilizers and fill the given tabular column. Observe the given map and list out the crops that are grown in our country. Name them. Collect the information about which crops are generally grown as third crops. Take some seeds and pour them into a glass of water. You can observe some seeds floating on water. Collect those seeds and observe under a hand lens and compare with seeds that sink in water. Mention the major practices in your village before sowing paddy seeds. Collect the information from nearby farmers and fill the given tabular column. Form a group of 4 to 5 members with your classmates. Visit a farm close to either your school or home. Talk to the farmers present there about the various crop diseases. Try to configure the causes for those diseases and also their characteristics. Observe the plants in a nearby field or school garden and collect the information about the leaves and stems. Name of the plant, place. Collect the information about Sagu Niti Sahakara Sangam in your village. Find out the methods of harvesting the crops in and around your village.
Discuss the different kinds of food that are obtained from animals and how they are useful to us. You have successfully completed the chapter Crop Production and Management.